The Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture to address you and actually give the keynote address, Minister Nkosinathi Emmanuel Mthethwa. Thank you very much, Minister.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Program Director, Deputy Minister of Sport, Arts and Culture. Former President Motlanthe told me that the welcoming address the Deputy Minister did this morning on behalf of the Premier of Gauteng. Former President says he did it word for word. This is what the Premier was going to say, word for word. But I'm a bit worried because she says I must give a keynote address, and she has done it already. To the former President of the Republic, President Motlanthe, here with us, Deputy Minister Soju, MECs here present, members of the Diplomatic Corps, Mr. Hlengwa, the chairperson of the SCOPA. It's a very feared committee. If you are asked to come to that committee, you'd know that there's trouble. We also have General Olomisa, Member of Parliament, here with us. Judge Yvonne Mkhoro, Judge, the outgoing chairperson of the Social Cohesion Advocates. Thank you for gracing this meeting here. The traditional leaders, including the provincial houses of traditional leaders, led by the president of the National House of Traditional Leaders, President Mahlangu, and the leadership, the business community with us here, labor organizations, religious bodies and institutions with us here, facilitators, distinguished guests, members of the media, fellow South Africans. It is an honor and great privilege for me that I stand before you and before this august forum of South Africans from all walks of life, joined by our friends across our national borders, to tackle a very important and timely subject, that of a social compact of social cohesion and nation building. Some may be mistaken to think that this project on social cohesion and nation building is a new societal preoccupation coming with the dawn of democracy in 1994. It has always been part of the architecture of the new democratic order, which is based on constitutionalism, equality, rule of law, human rights, and the independence of the judiciary, has been the preoccupation of the liberation movement, right from day one of their existence, particularly in the early 20th century. In his book titled "The Land is Ours" by Advocate Tembeka Ngcukaitobi, has this to say about Seme during the law school days and in practice, talking constitutionalism. The notions that especially impressed young Seme were the following: equality is intrinsic to the law, government should be ruled by law, individual rights cannot be removed without following due process before an independent judiciary, and the government should not behave in an arbitrary manner and should abide by clear rules. These resonated with the ideals of African society, founded on the notion of fairness and respect for others, close quote. This happened at a time that these were not expected, especially from a person of African origin. They were trailblazers in the field of law. In 1955, for instance, the people of South Africa from all walks of life gathered in Kliptown near Johannesburg over 2 days and adopted the famous document, the Freedom Charter. The Freedom Charter, amongst others, speaks of the following. In its preamble, it declares, South Africa belongs to all who live in it, black and white, and that no government can justly claim authority unless it is based on the will of the people. We underline that no government can justly claim authority unless it is based on the will of the people, not just of whites, but of all the people of the country. The Freedom Charter thus begins by an assertion of what is and has been cardinal democratic principle, that all can live in South Africa, whatever their origin, in equality and democracy. That the South Africa of the future will not be a country divided unto itself and dominated by a particular racial group, be it black or white. It will be the country of all of its inhabitants. As demonstrated above, the concept of nation building and social cohesion project precedes the dawn of democracy in 1994. That is, the mass democratic movement was always seized with the question as to what kind of society South Africa should be once liberated from colonialism and apartheid. And nowhere is this more self-evident in the series of papers on the national question. It was therefore unsurprising that amongst many other important priorities of the new administration was the effort to progressively make South Africa a socially integrated and inclusive society, given the socio-historical context of deep societal divisions along the contours of race, of class, of gender, of culture, of language, of religion, sexual orientation, amongst others. Whilst there is recognition that various axes of human difference intersect and that there needs to be a simultaneous effort in dealing with all forms of discrimination, there is no denying the fact in terms of centrality of race, and race being the foremost social construct that continues to circumscribe life experience, given our socio-historical context in relation to racial prejudice, racial discrimination, and outright racism. Thus, it would be dishonest of a social cohesion and nation-building program to avoid this fact. The commitment in building a non-racial, non-sexist, free and democratic society is an integral part of the preamble of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. The National Development Plan envisions a type of society in 2030 that will embrace its diversity rather than reify all those that divide us and have effects of human differences. Such a society, as envisioned in the NDP, will have a common set of values, an inclusive economy, and an increased social interaction amongst the different racial groups. The NDP also enjoins us to see a visibly strong leadership cadre across society buttressed by a mobilized, active, and responsible citizenry. Despite positive strides since 1994, South African society remains divided. The privilege attached to race, to class, space, and gender has not yet been fully reversed. The social, psychological, and geographic elements of apartheid continue to shape the lives and outlook of many South Africans. Through the social compact, business, government, labor, and civil society will agree to work together to bring about future change. That's why we say hashtag masivumelane. It will reaffirm the importance of freedom, of peace and security, as well as the respect of all human rights. The social compact is aimed at promoting national unity, cohesion, and nation building. The strategic objectives of the compact are focused on inviting all sectors of society to play a role in the following and ensure that we seek practical means to deal with this. There is, to a certain degree, some conference fatigue among South Africans. People have been moving from one conference to another. What confronts us today is to move beyond just a conference, but come up with practical steps to address the following. One, advancing constitutional democracy, human rights, and equality. Two, promoting non-racialism, peace, non-sexism, equality, and human solidarity. Three, building unity among South Africans, as well as within the region, SADC region, the continent, and the international community. Four, encouraging healing of individuals and communities as the Constitution enjoins us to do so. Fifth, we make a point that social cohesion will remain a pipe dream if it's separated from economic justice. The social compact will create a common front in overcoming our nation's challenges. It also seeks to make every South African an agent for positive change. It will contribute to our long-term development. The task before us today, however, is to put a seal to the mechanism that will ensure that all sectors of society are mobilized so that they too contribute meaningfully and optimally to this important national project on social cohesion and nation building. That social mechanism of engagement is what we now refer to as social compact or social contract. The rationale for the social compact convention comes upon the realization that no single sector, including government, can single-handedly succeed in the goal towards a socially integrated and inclusive society. That is, for South Africa to become a socially integrated and inclusive society, the different sectors in our society need to make commitments and hold each other to account. In other words, we should not shy away from discussing and confronting those very difficult questions facing us. And one of those questions is violence in our society. We see this manifesting itself on a number of fronts. Whether you're talking of old ladies who get attacked by young people on the allegations that they are witch doctors, whether it's people haunting and hunting people with albinism, whether you're talking about crime in South Africa, the common denominator is violence. We've got to deal with this. We've got to get pearls of wisdom, especially amongst all of us here who are part and parcel of this very society, but also understand why this violence in our society, why people resort to violence all the time in whatever they want to achieve. On this auspicious day, we have set time aside as South Africans from across the societal divide and from a wide range of sectors to bargain with each other and reach a broad consensus in terms of the letter and spirit of the social compact, itself a social contract that we all shall voluntarily enter into as part of our contribution to the promise of the Constitution and the vision of the National Development Plan. And as government, we are hopeful that this collective will set us on a path towards a desired trajectory of societal integration and transformation. In fact, by mere coming here, we are making a point that we who want peace, who want progress in South Africa, who want racial harmony, far outweigh those who want to take us back. And for that, we are grateful. Necessarily, thank you. Necessarily, this convention must, amongst other objectives, provide dialogue and create this as a platform on social cohesion to various key role players. Two, to obtain a broad consensus on the role that different sectors will play in promoting social cohesion and nation building. Here in mind, an example which just comes is what the labor movement, particularly COSATU, has said, that whatever belongs to them as COSATU, they will be able to put on the table and invest for the betterment of this country. That's one very positive example of forging social cohesion in our society. Obtain agreement on the spirit and the letter of the social compact and its binding force on all the sectors. I'm glad that all sectors are here, including civil society, business, labor, the media, and traditional authorities. And so, what is the state of play? What then is the nature of the problem we have to deal with? Which mechanism, such as social compact, has become necessary? The baseline survey by the Foundation for Human Rights concluded in their recent survey that race is a dominant variable in terms of the high levels of distrust in our society. In terms of this survey, 44% adults have no trust, none whatsoever, on people of other race groups or on people of other race groups. Only 56% indicated some level of trust of the other. Even here, 28% of adults can be classified in the low trust category, with 15% in the medium category. Further, 45% of the sample indicated to have experienced some kind of discrimination, with racism often cited as the sole reason for that perceived or felt discrimination. This, again, attests to the staying power of race and racism in limiting lived experience of people in this country. This is not to say that racism is solely responsible for all social fissures and division in society. Indeed, there are other manifestations and discrimination such as class, ethnicity, gender, culture, language, sexual orientation, and many others. However, the centrality of race, given the peculiarities of our socio-historical context, cannot be denied. For an example, patriarchy, like racism, also continues to be part of the lived experience. Thus, gender relations are still skewed in favor of men. The results from the baseline survey are hardly surprising as they corroborate this claim. Women constitute a majority in the population stakes, yet, in many respects, remain marginalized and more often fall victim to discrimination, abuse, and some, in the process, pay with their lives. Despite their precarious status in society, women had over centuries played a significant role in fostering cohesion across society. It is irrefutable that women tend to be predisposed to such critical roles in society as peacemaking, mediation, and nurturing of relationships. Implicit in this is the view that all effort towards social cohesion and nation building will stutter unless women are at the very center of that project and play a meaningful role. Thus, in terms of strategic interventions on social cohesion and nation building, much focus is required in terms of the extent of which these interventions are responsive to ravages of patriarchy in general and gender-based violence in particular. Experience of most women, however, intimates a worrying experience. Women and young girls still are discriminated and face gender-based violence, and this remains a worrying trend. Hence, government now has issued a call to action, and all government departments and state entities are now required to have related interventions about which they periodically report as part of the emergency response plan to deal with gender-based violence. There can be no success in the social cohesion and nation-building program if women are violated and rendered invisible. This is particularly relevant given the fact that women constitute a majority in our population, even in terms of sexual identity and orientation. The baseline survey seems to suggest that there is some tolerance and understanding in the general population of sexual minorities as in the form of LGBTIQ+. However, the lived experience of sexual minorities suggests that homophobia is still rife and rampant. The corrective rape phenomenon, for an example, is indicative of the extent of the scourge, and that a collective effort is not only necessary but urgent if we are to rid our society of most of these social ills. There has been criticism in some quarters that we had not recognized the lived realities of unemployment, equality, and poverty, which threaten to stymie any progress that may have been made since the dawn of democracy. It is an undeniable truth that South Africa remains one of the most unequal societies in the world, with the global inequality measure, the Gini coefficient at 0.68. But greater social cohesion and overcoming injustices of the past are within our collective grasp. If we work together, we will be able to succeed on this. I'm saying this boldly because as South Africa, we've proven that even under difficult circumstances, we've been able to come together to resolve the most difficult questions of our society, as we experienced in the early 90s at CODESA. Change begins with each one of us. It resides in the willingness to ensure greater daily and frank interaction with diverse fellow South Africans on an equal footing by talking to each other frankly, honestly, and openly about our situation, no matter how challenging it is, about our history and future. We will build social cohesion through common understanding. Ultimately, we want a nation that is defined by greater social interaction, cooperation, and solidarity. This vision is possible, and I assert that it is possible, and it is possible to achieve all that we want to see our country to be for now and posterity. Let us unite to grow South Africa together. It is within our reach. Thank you for your cooperation.
We want our society firstly to live a better life, and people must come together and unite in this country to confront the challenges we are faced with, because we realize as government that we will not be able to succeed alone. We need social partners, and those social partners, your civil society, labor movement, business, and so on, are important for us to come up with this compact, because the compact can only come from partners.
Yeah, Honorable Minister,
Thank you.
Wonderful, great idea. So please, can you just encourage youth, everyone in this country about social cohesion?
It's very important. It's very important because first and foremost, you respect other people. You understand the importance of humanity as a whole. You work against exclusion, against discrimination, which is extremely important, because as human beings, we can't be discriminating against each other, whether on tribal lines, on xenophobia, on racial lines, on gender inequality. All those things we must fight in our society if we are going to realize social progress.
Thank you very much. One more question, please. Who are the stakeholders that you bring into this?
Yeah, it's everybody. We have the private sector here, we have the religious bodies, we have traditional leaders, we have civil society. We are very happy that all of these people respected when we made our call that they should come.
Yes.
Thanks, Mojis TV.